Marietje Schaake.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Hilde. I was indeed rushing in, so I hope I can still make sense, because that is a challenge, to make sense of the whole situation in Turkey and what's the best step forward. I think the rapporteur and all the shadow rapporteurs have, after long deliberations, found a key line that on the one hand recalls our resolution from last year, in which this House already wanted to attach consequences to the violations of the rule of law and human rights of people in Turkey, especially after the despicable coup attempt, which failed but which was not without consequences. Secondly, of course, a core development has been the referendum on the constitutional reforms package, and we state clearly with the majority in this report that if this package is adopted unchanged, it would automatically, and I should stress unfortunately, make for a situation where Turkey no longer meets the Copenhagen criteria. And we state this very clearly in this report. I think that is the core of the work that we have done. And I'm happy to talk longer about, our concerns about the respect for fundamental rights and freedoms, whether it's press freedom, whether it's the rights of minorities and people with different lifestyles, whether it's checks and balances, independence of the judiciary, etc., etc. But I feel like we in this House, and importantly so, have emphasized these very core principles for years now. And I'm glad that we did, across political party lines for such a sensitive topic, but I'm concerned about the lack of outspokenness on the part of the European Commission and the European Council. And therefore, I think it is all the more important that we, as a representation of the people in Europe, are clear and draw a line that all the developments that are happening in Turkey have real consequences. As a final note, let me say, because this has been a topic that has come up a lot in discussing EU-Turkey relations and this report, I think it is important that I do not, my group does not, and I believe this House does not, intend for this report to be a slap in the face of people in Turkey who are also deeply concerned about the direction their country is going. But if we in Europe do not stand by certain fundamental principles, who will? And what service do we do to those people who would also like to live in a more democratic Turkey, in a Turkey that respects the rights of minorities and that does apply checks and balances, separation of powers, and all the very foundations of the rule of law? So I just think it is important that everyone watching in Turkey, and we're asking for a translation into Turkish of this report, understands that we do understand that this is a polarizing issue, and we hear the concerns of journalists imprisoned, academics imprisoned, civil society actors who are also deeply, deeply worried about the future of their country. But in fact, we feel like we are left with little choice but to be clear about the principles that the EU stands for and that we must hold candidate countries to account for.